let me just sort of give you the lay of the land for hazing law.
Okay.
Um, 44 states in the United States have hazing laws on the books right now. Only 6 states do not have an anti-hazing law. Uh, these laws have evolved over time so that they have generally gotten tougher over time in many different states. And the hazing laws generally focus on 2 things: trying to stop hazing before it happens by criminalizing hazing and setting forth what the criminal penalties will be for hazing. And then the other focus of the hazing laws, which is a more recent phenomenon, is trying to incentivize people to call for help when a hazing victim is in trouble. So we have a punishment aspect of the hazing laws that are on the books, and we have an incentive built into an emerging body of hazing law to try to get people who are witnessing hazing where a victim is in serious trouble to call 911 and try to save the life of the victim. And there are only a handful of states that have that particular law. So that's sort of the general lay of the land at the moment.
Okay, perfect. So, and I mean, are there any that are on a federal level? You've mentioned that, 44 of the 50 states have their own. How about on a federal level?
Uh, in December of last year, in his final weeks in office, President Biden signed the Stop Campus Hazing Act, which was an amendment to an existing law in the United States. But it was the first time that a hazing law specifically at a federal level addressed the concerns of so many of the parents. And the Stop Campus Hazing Act requires several things. It requires universities that receive federal funding to keep track of hazing incidents on their campus. And they have to start keeping that data as of July of 2025, just 2 months ago. So we are now in the very early stages of campuses that have to keep track of hazing incidents. And then once a year, they have to have a hazing transparency filing where that data is accumulated and posted on the university websites. And that will allow people who are thinking about going to a particular college or joining a particular fraternity or sorority to have a convenient place to go and look for the data. And it does some other things, but the federal Stop Campus Hazing Act is the principal law at the moment.
Okay. Absolutely. And I mean, when we're looking at, these laws set on, a federal level, you said that there really is just that one law. Before that, there was nothing that really would prevent hazing federally.
Uh, that's right. There was no, I am not aware of any federal prosecution for hazing at any time uh, in the past. Uh, but really, I wouldn't get too hung up on, well, was it a crime federally, but yes, a crime in the statewide? Because if it's a crime, it's a crime. And it really doesn't much matter whether it's a federal crime or a state crime. So if you haze in 44 states in the United States, it is a crime. And the way the criminal statutes work in the United States for hazing is that they generally um, define hazing that creates a substantial risk of physical injury or mental injury as a misdemeanor. But where hazing results in serious bodily injury or mental injury, it's a third-degree felony in many states. And as a third-degree felony, depending upon what state you're in, you could go to jail for up to 7 years in some states, up to 3 years in other states. You could be fined up to $10,000 in some states. And you can even spend time in jail and be fined if it's a misdemeanor. It just depends on the willingness of the prosecutor to bring the charges.
Well, I mean, you mentioned 44 out of 50 states. Are there any states that have the strictest hazing laws, or is there ones that maybe have more lean hazing laws?
Pennsylvania has a fairly strict law. Florida has a fairly strict law. And as time has evolved, the states are all tending to modify their hazing laws so that they're increasingly similar. They define hazing pretty much the same way in most states. And many states have adopted this concept of if you haze someone and it results in serious bodily injury or mental harm, it will be a third-degree felony. And if it creates a substantial risk of injury, but didn't actually injure, just created a substantial risk of injury, it's a misdemeanor. But despite the fact that these laws are on the books, they're only meaningful if you have prosecutors who are willing to enforce them. And too often we have prosecutors who don't enforce them. They don't bring the charges when they should. And there are a number of examples where hazing has taken place on campus in a state where there is a very solid anti-hazing law on the books and charges were never filed. One good example is the Antonio Cialis case out of Cornell, where they hazed Antonio Cialis, and the following day his body was found at the bottom of a gorge. And we know exactly what the hazing consisted of in his case, and the prosecutor never brought any charges. So that sends all the wrong messages. Conversely, in the Piazza case in Pennsylvania, Andrew Coffey's case out of Florida State, where Andrew Coffey was hazed in a very similar way to Tim Piazza, and Andrew Coffey died as a result of the hazing at Florida State. And the prosecutor in Tallahassee, Florida, where that took place, filed criminal charges against 9 defendants, and they all went to jail. Just like in the Piazza case, criminal charges were filed against a whole bunch of fraternity members, and some of them went to jail also. So it all depends on the willingness of the prosecutor to enforce the law.
And how about you've mentioned Pennsylvania has quite a strict rule. Do you know how strict Ohio's law is when it comes to hazing compared to maybe some other states?
Well, Ohio has a hazing law that was named after ah, just came back to me. Yeah, Ohio has a hazing law named after Colin Wyatt, who died in a hazing incident in 2018 at Ohio University. And the law was modified after his tragic death. And now Ohio has a solid anti-hazing law, but it's very similar to the law in other states. You know, it's difficult to say one state's stricter than another or it's a tougher law than another. I mean, hazing is either a crime or it isn't. And it is a crime in 44 states. It's a crime in Ohio. And if you haze in Ohio, you can go to jail either as a for a felony or a misdemeanor, depending upon what sort of hazing it was and what the impact was on the victim.
And is this just for like universities, or could these, laws be different when you're talking about minors in high school that are also participating in hazing?
Yeah. No, the hazing laws apply to any sort of a school or organization in the state. Now, that being said, the high profile hazing cases are generally at the college level, although occasionally you'll see some high school cases. But I've never seen a case where a high school student has actually gone to jail for hazing. There could be other forms of punishment in the high school setting, and it's also theoretically possible that a high school student could go to jail for hazing, but I've never seen it. And the enforcement of these hazing statutes comes down to the discretion of the prosecutor. So the prosecutor has to decide whether he or she wants to actually bring hazing charges in any particular case. And at the high school setting, because they're younger, you may see more of a reluctance by a prosecutor to want to pursue charges that would actually result in jail time, but it could happen.
And do these laws, when you look at, colleges, universities, even high schools, does that need to be clear with the schools and educators? I know some of them that's even a part of their law when you look at state to state laws.
Some of the state laws mandate that colleges and universities and other institutions of higher learning must bring the students together and put on an anti-hazing program. So some schools have that. And that's been going on for a long time. And it's not uncommon for a university to require all members of fraternities and sororities to get together in one place at one time where they speak to them about hazing and why they shouldn't do it. I mean, I've gone around the country and spoken in those programs, and I've been in a room of hundreds and hundreds of fraternity members and sorority members where they're there because they've been ordered to be there, not necessarily because they want to be there, but they're being told that hazing is against the law and you can't do it. But you need to know that it's not just the laws that can have a meaningful impact here. Every major college and university in the country has an anti-hazing policy. Every major fraternity and sorority has an anti-hazing policy. So the laws and the rules are on the books. They've been around for a long time, but the hazing continues and it hasn't stopped. And it's just remarkable to me. Since the year 2000, over 100 fraternity pledges have either died or been seriously injured because of hazing. And that's in spite of the fact that this hazing is taking place in states that have anti-hazing laws on the books. And it's taking place on campuses where the colleges and universities have anti-hazing policies. And it's with fraternities and sororities that at the national level, they too have anti-hazing policies. So the rules and regulations are there. They've been there for a long time. They're all in place, and yet it continues. So the question is, if it continues, why isn't it stopping, and what can we do to stop it? And it can only be stopped if you can get to these college students and scare them into stopping. They've got to understand there's real teeth behind these laws and real teeth in these policies so that if they do haze, there will be serious and swift consequences.
As these laws get stricter, have you noticed that there are less hazing cases, or is it a growing problem?
Hazing has not abated. It's as bad now as it has ever been, maybe worse, which is almost unimaginable. I've been working on hazing cases around the United States for over 30 years, and more laws have been passed in the last 30 years. More rules and regulations at the college and university level have been implemented in the last 30 years, and yet the hazing continues unabated. So it's not slowing down, despite the fact that we even have a hazing awareness week now in the United States, which takes place nationally on most college campuses, where speakers are brought in to speak to members of the Greek community about why you should not haze. All of that's taking place, and yet it continues. So we need to do more. And if we don't, you're going to see not just the 100 who have died in the last 25 years, there will be more to come.
And I mean, are there any gaps or loopholes in the law when it comes to hazing that kind of is still allowing this?
Um, I think the laws are in place as they should be, but it comes down to enforcement. When you have obvious instances of hazing where someone's gotten hurt or died and you don't file criminal charges, that's a gap in the law. And those there are examples where that has taken place. I've had cases where Someone has died in hazing, but the prosecutor refuses to bring the criminal charges. Now, prosecutors are waking up to this. They're getting much more serious about enforcing the anti-hazing laws. Parents are demanding it. Students are demanding it. Universities are demanding it. So there is a growing movement to enforce the existing laws. I honestly don't think more laws are really necessary. We just have to enforce the ones we have. And the colleges and universities need to be more proactive in disciplining those who are involved in the hazing. Too often, they refuse to take swift action against the fraternity members who were involved in all of this. And they just drag their feet. And the next thing you know, the guys have graduated. So they were never disciplined when they were in school. And if the colleges had a zero tolerance policy, where if we find out that you hazed and someone was seriously injured or died, you will be expelled from school immediately. Immediately. But that's not happening, even in the most egregious cases.
Yeah, I mean, so in some cases too, and now I've just been hearing this and some research, and I wanted to see if you've had any experience or seen this, yourself. We've been hearing that sometimes when people have a sorority or fraternity, they kind of distance themselves from the university so that they can get away with things like hazing. Is that something that you have seen?
The fraternity members have this misguided notion in some instances. And let me be clear, this is not the majority of fraternity members or sorority members in our country. It is not. People have asked me many times, well, do you think we should put an end to fraternities and sororities? I say no, because they do a lot of good things and there are a lot of good people involved. We are talking about a single digit percentage of fraternity members and sorority members who do these things. So we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But there are some fraternity members who have this misguided notion that they need to perpetuate these very dangerous traditions that can easily injure or kill somebody, but they want to perpetuate these traditions anyway. So, what they do in the face of these new university rules that have a zero tolerance policy, they will move these hazing events off campus to a house that either is owned by an alumni of the fraternity or is being rented by fraternity members, and they move the party there. And that's exactly what happened to Andrew Coffey at Florida State University when he died. He died in an off campus fraternity event that was an annual tradition where, as part of that tradition, every pledge has to consume an entire bottle of hard liquor. But they didn't do it on campus, they did it off campus, thinking that no one would find out about it. Well, guess what? They did find out about it. And the police came and people got arrested and they went to jail and Andrew Coffey died. But the fact that they moved it off campus accomplished nothing because there are too many people involved in these things to keep it secret. And you don't keep it a secret by moving it off campus, even though some people think, well, maybe we can.
And is there anything else you would like to add about hazing that maybe I didn't ask about, that I didn't cover, that you feel would be really useful for this piece?
Um, I think we should be clear on one thing, and this may matter to you. I'm not sure. I don't know. Um, but when you're talking about hazing laws, uh, we didn't really talk too much about um, the the new laws that are now on the books in some states to incentivize people to call for help if they see that a hazing victim is in trouble. Now, just a couple of months ago, the governor of Missouri signed a new law. It's called Danny's Law. It's named after Danny Santulli, who was horribly injured in a hazing incident at the University of Missouri a few years ago. And as a result of the hazing, Danny has been left permanently blind, unable to speak, unable to walk, and unable to care for himself. And he will be that way for the rest of his life. I represented Danny and his family in that case. And it was a case where I sued about 25 defendants. And I ended up settling with all of them. And when the case was over, I was contacted by some people in Missouri because they heard that I had worked on a law in Florida that was following the death of Andrew Coffey. And I wrote a law in Florida, which is now on the books, and it's called Andrew's Law. And it was signed into law by Governor DeSantis. And Missouri heard about that law, and they wanted to have a similar law. And so I went and helped with that effort in Missouri, and it passed the legislature unanimously and signed by the governor. And in both of these states, what this law says is if you witness a hazing event and you see that the victim is in trouble, if you are the first person to call 911 and you give your name and provide the information and you stay on the scene until police or fire rescue or campus security arrive, you will be immune from prosecution under the state's criminal statute. And it extends that immunity to anyone who is rendering aid to the victim while help is on the way. So if, for example, you're doing CPR on a hazing victim while your friend called 911 and help is on the way, if you actually were doing that, you will be immune from prosecution under the hazing statute, regardless of your role in the hazing incident. So when I testified before the Florida legislature in support of this, and I testified before the Missouri legislature in support of this law, some people said to me, well, wait a minute, you mean to tell me that you want to give potentially immunity from prosecution under the criminal hazing statute to the person who bought the alcohol, gave it to the victim, made him drink it, and put him in that position of almost dying or maybe dying, and you want to give immunity to that person? And I said, that's exactly what I'm proposing. I said, ask any parent who has lost their son to hazing, and they will all tell you the same thing. They would much rather have their son back than prosecute the person who did it. And that resonated with everybody on the committee in Florida, everybody on the committee in Missouri, and it passed the Florida legislature and the Missouri legislature unanimously, and it was signed into law in both states. So now there are about 4 or 5 states that have this law on the books, and it's designed to save the victims of hazing in those instances where no one has been able to stop the hazing. And it's a great law, and I'm going to continue to work on it in other states, because if you can't stop it, let's save the victims before they die.
Yeah. PA has that law, I think. I think I saw that was part of theirs, the immunization, I believe.
Yes, but it's different.
Okay.
Pennsylvania, you're right. It's called a safe harbor provision in the
Yes.
Pennsylvania law. And in Pennsylvania, under the Timothy Piazza anti-hazing law, if you are a witness to a hazing incident and you reasonably believe that the victim's in serious trouble, and you call the police or fire rescue or campus security, and if they learn of the incident for the first time from you, then you can have immunity from prosecution under the Pennsylvania hazing statute. The Pennsylvania law, however, does not go as far as Florida and Missouri, because it does not extend that immunity to someone who is rendering aid to the victim while help is on the way. And that's a big thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see other states adopt precisely what Florida and Missouri have now. And you may even see an amendment someday to the Pennsylvania law extending the immunity to someone rendering aid to the victim while help is on the way, because it makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. And Ohio doesn't have anything like that. I didn't see that, right? I don't think Ohio has anything like that.
No, they do not.
Okay. Just wanted to clarify on that.